So the Cowboys get active in the first few days of free agency. And by active, I mean walk into the mailbox and back to the crib. Here's a no BS recap of what the Cowboys have done on the first few days in free agency. Let's start off with running back Javonte Williams. They went out and signed a 1-year, $3 million deal, basically a low-end bargain, veteran minimum type deal. Still a very young running back who at one time was a pretty decent and good back prior to the knee injury. I remember he tore the Cowboys up when the Broncos whooped on Dallas at the crib back in 2021, but he tore his ACL and I believe LCL, and he kind of hasn't been the same running back. But if he can kind of recapture some of that, he is a downhill bowling ball, physical type of running back, can give you a bit of an edge in that department. But in no way, shape, or form should Javonte Williams stop you from drafting a running back or two when it comes to the NFL draft. But they needed to go out and sign a veteran guy in free agency, given that there is quite literally nobody in that room. And they did so, as opposed to bringing back Rico Dowdle, who will likely garner a little bit more money than Javonte Williams. There's a debate on who the better back is. I don't really think there's much of a big difference here. You can prefer a guy like Rico has a little bit more wiggle room or a little bit more wiggle. Obviously, it's been the better back the last year. Or you can say, hey, Javonte Williams is a more powerful back, a lot of receptions out the backfield, more success over a number of years. Either way, I don't think either of those backs move the needle, and I don't think either of those backs should have changed your plans going into free agency. However, again, they needed to bring in somebody in free agency at that position. They brought in Javonte Williams, solid guy, not going to move the needle. We'll see what happens. He may just end up being a camp body in the same way that a Rojo was. Ronald Jones, if you guys remember him a few years ago. Very similar. Running backs who had some success in this league, but on the back ends of their career, or I should say at the current times that they were signed, they hadn't had that same success as earlier in their career. So I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of camp, Javonte Williams isn't even on the team, and also wouldn't be shocked if he's your RB2, RB3. It's that type of signing, low risk, and that's what the Dallas Cowboys like to do. Offensive lineman Robert Jones out of Miami, not really that good of a player. Did play a lot of snaps last year at the guard position, over 1,000 snaps. Gave up 5 sacks for an offensive line, an offense that wasn't that good in Miami. Again, another guy that I can see not even really making this team. You already have TJ Bass, Brock Hoffman, a Nate Thomas, who are kind of middling type of players at best. And that's not disrespect to these players. That's just who they currently are. And I'd argue TJ Bass and Brock Hoffman are better than this guy. So again, another player who I don't let me say this. It wouldn't shock me if he's not on the roster come September. A very low end signing here in Robert Jones. Not really expecting much, but he's a big guy, 6'4", 330 pounds, not a nimble player, but he has a lot of experience in the sense of, again, over 1,000 snaps last year, started all 17 games, over 2,000 snaps in his career. They're addressing some depth. I didn't think they needed to address depth at that position. I thought they needed to address the starter or starting position, unless they're looking at a guy like Brock Hoffman as the guy. Look, when it comes to being a Cowboys fan, you got to know how to block out the noise. And I got the perfect thing for you. The Everyday Earbuds by Raycon. They have everything you need. You're tired of the trolls at work? Pop in the Everyday Earbuds by Raycon with their active noise cancellation feature. It's capable of drowning out the most annoying Eagle fan you may work with. You need to binge listen to all your Cowboys coverage without worrying about the battery? No problem. The latest model has a 32-hour lifespan, and you can pair it with 2 devices at the same damn time. And if you run out of juice, Raycon's quick charge function will get you 90 minutes of battery in just 10 minutes of charging. Boom! Without a doubt, the most comfortable earbuds I've had, and with their tap function, it reduces discomfort whenever you're using them. I pop in my Raycons when I'm listening to my Cowboys coverage around the house, and I don't want to disturb the old lady. Not a good idea. I also use them when I'm walking my dog and I got the beats playing in the background. Bottom line, whatever you do in your everyday life, Raycon earbuds makes it that much more comfortable. And if you're still unsure, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy, no questions asked. But why would you be unsure? Go to buyraycon.com/steal to get 20% off the best-selling everyday earbuds brought to you by Raycon. What's that, sweetie? The noise cancellation. Gotta go. Defensive tackle Solomon Thomas. Now this one is interesting because Solomon Thomas, I remember a top 5 pick, I believe 3rd overall for the San Francisco 49ers, flamed out. Wasn't a good player there. Basically was a bust. Then he went on to the Raiders, and the last 3 years he's been with the New York Jets, where he's had his most success as a defensive lineman. And ironically, he coached or played under coach Aaron Whitecott, who is now the defensive line coach for the Dallas Cowboys. So you do have that connection, and you do have him being his best with the New York Jets under Whitecott. This one is interesting because I do think from a depth standpoint, it's pretty solid depth. A backup 3 tech if need be. He is a very undersized defensive lineman. I think he could play a lot on the edge as kind of that force player, that left defensive end type of player, opposite of a speed rusher in Michael Parsons or Sam Williams. But again, another guy who I actually do expect him to be on this roster come September. But again, not a guy that's going to really move the needle here. But of the 3 that we have discussed, I do think this is the best signing because I think he can actually have an impact as a rotational defensive lineman. The other 2, it wouldn't shock me if they didn't make the roster, whereas I think Solomon Thomas could provide some pretty solid depth. Defensive end Payton Turner. This is just one of those, let's take a flyer on another bust. Okay, he's a 1st round pick out of New Orleans, has not played a ton of games in his career. Injuries, a lot of injuries to start his career. Finally, last year he played a significant amount of games, but didn't play a lot of snaps. 16 games he was active, only 335 snaps. Showed his best film as a pass rush guy, but he's very flash guy. Huge flash guy, but not production guy. You know, only about 39 pressures in his career, only 5 sacks in his career, which spans over 4 seasons. He falls right in the line of, okay, I can see where he may not even make this team come September if they elect to just go ahead and draft guys or sign some veterans because they're not seeing enough in a Payton Turner. But this falls right along the lines of what the Cowboys like to do. Take flyers on former high round picks, draft pedigree that obviously has some talent that they may have liked coming out of college, right? Jonathan Mingo, and seeing if they can hit. And that's kind of what you got in almost all of these signings. So I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. This doesn't move the needle and shouldn't move you at all. You could say, oh, well, Sky, they're addressing depth. Why are you addressing the bottom end of depth on the first day and a half of free agency where you should be addressing starters? I don't think you signed a single starter to start free agency. Now, obviously, it's not over, but am I shocked? No, I'm not shocked at all. The Cowboys, this is their MO. They like to sign a lot of 1-year low-end deals as opposed to signing starters on multiple years in free agency. They want to get that in the draft, and I expect them to try to do that. The problem is, if you have drafts like you've had over the last few seasons, well, you put yourself in a lot of trouble. You put yourself in a hole that you got to dig out from the previous years of not drafting very well. What I haven't discussed is the actual departures, the losses of a Chauncey Golston, right? Defensive and defensive tackle, and the cornerback Jordan Lewis. The question now becomes to you. I'll let you guys answer this in the comments. Do the additions outweigh the losses that the Cowboys have had so far in free agency? And by additions, I don't mean retaining the guys like an Oso Odigizua and Marquise Bell and Turpin. I mean the outside guys. Bring in the Payton Turner, Solomon Thomas, Robert Jones, Javonte Williams. Do they outweigh losing Chauncey Golston and a Jordan Lewis. I don't think so personally. I don't think Payton Turner replaces a Chauncey Golston. You could argue maybe Solomon Thomas could. But I still think, obviously, look at Golston, the contract he got with the Giants. It's because he's shown over the last few years he can be a really solid player. And then, obviously, Jordan Lewis, right? J. Lou, pretty much the heart and soul of the defense last year. Just a very reliable slot corner, one of the best ones in the league. Went out and got the bag. I don't think it was so much money that the Cowboys couldn't afford to do it. But, again, they have a way of doing things. They have a number they just refuse to go over, whether it be for their own kind of role players or whether it be for outside free agents. But there you have it, man. My no BS take on the first few days of free agency for the Cowboys. Let me know how you feel in the comments, and we'll talk to you next time.